Well, today I have something special to talk to you about, but before I do that, I do want to talk about the parable of the prodigal son. And what I'm going to share with you, actually, I learned from Thomas Smith. He was, this was some time ago, but you may have heard of him. He, in fact, was one of the speakers at the Eucharistic Congress that we recently had in the diocese. And Thomas Smith has studied extensively the parables that were present in Palestine at the time of Jesus, the rabbinic parables. And it turns out that this parable that Jesus told to them about the prodigal son, that as he began to lay out this parable, the crowd there was very familiar with this existing parable, and so they must have been saying to themselves, why is he telling us this parable? We all know how this ends. We understand it very well. And it goes exactly the same way that our gospel parable goes up until the son reaches the Father. So they're all wondering why Jesus is even bothering to tell them this. So if you put yourself in their place, maybe you'll begin to appreciate the impact that this parable had on them. Because a man had 2 sons, and one of the sons asked for his inheritance. And the father gave it to him, and the son went away to a faraway country and spent all of the inheritance. And when a famine came, he was starving. He was working, feeding swine, unclean animals, to the Jews. And finally he came to his senses and said, I'll go back to my father. And so he did. He went back to his father. And all of the parable is the same up to this point. But when he arrives at the house of the father looks at him and says, you are dead to me. You have shamed our family. Never come back again. That was the parable that they were used to hearing, that they were all familiar with. So when Jesus talked about the mercy of the Father, it shocked them greatly. And hopefully this will help you appreciate the message that Jesus gave as well. You see, even today in Middle Eastern culture, not just Christian or Jewish culture, but throughout the whole Middle East, to ask for the inheritance before the father has died is a tremendous insult. It's considered to be wishing the father were dead. And so that's why this had such an impact on the Jews. And it's the reason, or on the Jews that listen to this, and it's the reason that Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI have both said this parable really should be called the parable of the merciful father, because that's what it was really about. Not the prodigal son, but the merciful father. So I wanted to share that with you today, that insight. Now, in addition to this today, Father Caleb and I would like to invite you to attend something that's going to happen here a little while out in the future, a Life in the Holy Spirit seminar. It'll begin on Friday, October 18th, about 7 p.m. over here in the center. Last week, Father talked to us about how Jesus, in our relationship with Jesus, Jesus is all in. God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is all in this relationship. And so, as Father talked about that last week, the question is, where are we? See, Jesus wants to be the Lord of your life. Now, maybe you're listening to me now, but I hope you're hearing me as well. In the Gospels, and St. Paul talked about this too, sometimes we listen, but we don't really hear. Well, I pray that you'll really hear what I'm saying. Father has often told us that when you hear something in all the Gospels, you should pay attention to it. If the same thing appears in all 4 Gospels, then it's something we really ought to pay attention to. Well, in the Gospel of Matthew, St. John the Baptist says of Jesus, "He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and with fire." And in the Gospel of Mark, John the Baptist says, "I have baptized you with water. He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit." In the Gospel of John, or in the Gospel of Luke, John the Baptist says, "He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire." And in the Gospel of John, John the Baptist says, "He is the one who will baptize with the Holy Spirit." Now, in addition to this being in all 4 Gospels, we also have Jesus' words from the Acts of the Apostles, where after his resurrection and appearing to the disciples, Jesus says, "John baptized with water, but in a few days you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit." And indeed, after a few days, on Pentecost, Jesus did baptize them with the Holy Spirit. Now, before that, they said they were his disciples. They thought they were his disciples. But after Jesus baptized them with the Holy Spirit, they were his disciples to death. Jesus was the Lord of their life. Jesus had said to them, "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you." And they did receive power. They had a profound experience of God's presence within them through the power of the Holy Spirit. And their lives were changed forever. Well, Jesus wants to be the Lord of your life. Whether you're listening or not, whether you're hearing me or not, Jesus wants to be the Lord of your life. Now, in these seminars, this is what typically happens to someone who attends a Life in the Holy Spirit seminar. First of all, they too typically experience the power of the Holy Spirit. They too typically have a powerful experience of God's presence in them. And typically, their lives are changed forever. I think it would be appropriate at this point for those who want theological rigor to read a quote from Pope Paul VI in speaking of the Holy Spirit and about this. So here's the quote. At this point, someone might raise the objection, but doesn't the church already possess the Holy Spirit? Isn't this need already satisfied? Yes, of course, the church already and forever possesses the Holy Spirit. But first of all, his action admits of various degrees and circumstances, so that our action is needed too if the activity of the Holy Spirit is to be free and full. Our action is needed too if the activity of the Holy Spirit is to be free and full. So that's simply what Father Caleb and I want to do. We want to help you to take whatever action it is that you need to take to allow the action of the Holy Spirit to be free and full. We want to help you to do whatever it is you need to do to allow Jesus to be the Lord of your life.